I started making quilts about 30 years ago. I went to an exhibit at the Chicago Public Library of quilts of Southern Illinois. It was at a time when quilts were starting to be hung as pieces of abstract art as well as textiles. They just really caught my eye, and I wanted a quilt. I'd never really thought about it before. So the next couple years I looked around at quilts, thought about buying one, and I couldn't find the right one, so I decided I should try making it. I made one, and that was my downfall. I had to keep going, so I started buying fabric. My very second quilt was something I designed myself for a friend, and then I designed others, and it was extremely addictive. I started dyeing the fabric for the quilts maybe about 10 years ago, and I resisted doing it for a while because it takes a lot more time, and I didn't have enough time to work on the quilts to begin with. But I thought I would give it a try, and once I started, I just loved it, and it added so much to the quilts. It really just moved them into a completely different realm. And it makes my quilts much more painterly. I feel that they're kind of on the border between paintings and fabric art. Usually I just dye fabric not for a specific quilt, and so I create a big palette of colors and textures that I can work with. And then depending on what kind of quilt I want to work on, I'll assemble some fabrics, and I'll start cutting and sewing things together. Then I'll put pieces up on the wall and see how they interact. I'll have an idea in mind, but I wouldn't have done a sketch. And I just improvise and figure it out as I go along. So then there'll be parts of it that I don't use at all, or maybe I'll use later in something else. A lot of editing happens, but not until I've created a lot of things to work with. I work in Mabou, Cape Breton Island, and I'm lucky enough to look out on the water. I can see West Mabou Beach from my studio. The landscape and weather is just with me all the time, and I absorb all kinds of impressions from it. Usually when I'm in motion, like hiking or kayaking, or even sometimes going to the dances, I just soak up the impressions and then try to create works that are abstract but have that feeling behind them. And usually it's a pretty joyful feeling. That seems to be what my work tends to try to express. I don't expect people to see my work the same way I do, to immediately understand where my initial impulse for making the work came from. I want them to have their own experience of it. And I hope that they appreciate the complexity of it, that I can create something where they keep coming back and looking at it more than once, especially if they own something, that they won't get tired of it. I try to just convey my own joy in the natural world and in music, and just hope that comes through on some level to the viewer, but letting them have their own experience of it.